Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. This past week, Ron and I got to spend some time together. We're going to dive into the topic, of course, but Ron, how was it hanging out with K-Sock from Portland? First time in a while.
Oh, it was great. It was wonderful. And your friends, shout out to Justine and Lori.
Why did I laugh? Well, we had
here's
Ron
the
on
funny
floor.
part.
Not me. It was Justine.
Kristen balances her friends. Lori was very quiet.
Yeah.
Kristen's somewhere in the middle. And then Justine, you don't have to worry about what she's thinking. Hi, Justine.
It really was. It's so funny. That's why I always say, like, don't find mini-me's. Same thing in the office, right? Don't find a team that is a mirror image of yourself. You have to find people that stretch you in different ways. Like Justine brings me out of, I can be quiet sometimes. She brings me out and I make, every time she's around, I'm having fun. Lori's a good thinker. I'm always thinking. She's the person, like, in your training, she gets you back from the moon. Everyone gets excited.
Yeah.
Justine's all pumped up to go to the moon. And I'm like, hey, absolutely, let's do this. And Lori's the one that's like, wait, how are we going to get back to Earth though? Right? So we're a good little threesome there.
Yeah. It's something I do, folks, in my training when I'm going through personality styles. The conference, though, was it superseded my expectations. It's a challenge putting something like that together, but the presentations were very dynamic. But I just thought the networking, people talking, the volunteers there the night before did such an outstanding job. So I'm always, moved and touched when I see people using their talents and serving. And Kristin, your social media presentation was really good.
Thank
It was
you.
strong. I was shocked. I'm kidding.
I'm like, wait, I don't know where you're going with this.
It was great. And Kristin tried to get me up there on the stage to do some weird social media pose. And I got a model to stand in for me, of course.
Hey, that worked well.
Josh
it's this great piece. I don't want to give it away because I thought of it on the fly. But I'm like, when people think of social media, and that's what my speech was on. I shouldn't say speech. I'm so used to doing speeches. That's my presentation was on, was social media and the importance of it. Well, I basically was trying to break down some barriers where everyone thinks that social media is all these kind of douchey poses, right? Everyone's, especially the girls on social media, are all doing these things. The guys are posing with their expensive cars, etc. But I had someone from the audience come on stage and replicate a pose that I did and posted on social media when I was in Nashville. And it's pretty much like your quintessential Instagram post. But we had him up there doing it and it was fabulous.
Yeah, it was good
get
stuff.
That picture out there.
So a lot of great presentations.
A lot of laughs. That's really important. You and I both were able to make people laugh during our presentations. It's huge.
Yeah, no one can ever say I don't work the crowd.
No, not at all. That's key, right? Otherwise people glaze over.
My new tagline, I don't know if you saw it on LinkedIn, is making training fun again.
Oh, I like it. Did you really put that there?
Yeah.
Nice. I need to go check it out.
Yeah,
so it was that was a great conference and a great trip all around. Ron, let's talk about what our episode today is about. Episode 93.
Absolutely.
Wow, can't believe we're there already.
It's titled Accused of Racism, Acquitted of Guilt, Daniel Perry's Leadership Under Fire. Let's set the scene. It was a crowded New York City subway car filled with everyday people just trying to get where they're going. And that's when Rodney Dunn began exhibiting threatening behavior, shouting, making aggressive gestures, and scanning passengers. Witnesses described the atmosphere as tense and fearful. And I watched an interview today, Kristin, from Daniel Perry's, his perspective. And it was so interesting to see his POV on this and what he was thinking at the time. And he really silenced some critics, but I'll talk more about that as we go.
Yeah. And, I don't know if everyone who is listening knows this about me, but I lived and worked in New York City for almost a year and a half and rode the N train every day. So I know what it's like to be on a crowded subway car as a strap hanger. That's what it's called because you're hanging onto a strap right now, a lot of poles. But when you're commuting in and out, you are in there with every walk of life and it can be scary. I've had instances, never ones that got to this level, but I've definitely been nervous and had to be very vigilant when on the subway car.
Kristen, I've ridden subways and trains all over the country, and I did feel a little more uncomfortable on the New York trains than I did, or the subways than I did some of the other parts of the country for sure. So I can imagine the scene was pretty tense.
Right. It is interesting because I've ridden them in Boston and San Francisco, and I never felt that way. Even DC, I never felt that way.
You just named the 3 places I've
Oh, how funny. Yeah, no, they're vastly different. They're actually clean and, very, very different experience. So it's interesting because, this is where leadership begins. Let's think about Daniel Perry. So Daniel took initiative. He saw what was happening. He decided to act. And leadership often emerges in moments where no one else is willing to step up. A lot of times on social media and on the news, we see people filming and they're not willing to put the camera down to help. Instead, they're calling for help. It's really piss poor leadership. And Daniel Perry chose to intervene instead of waiting for somebody else to do it.
And the sad part is, in our country, at one point, that would have been probably 95% of people would have thought he was a hero.
Right.
But we'll get into that.
And more people would have offered to help, too, in this day and age. We're not seeing that very much.
Yeah. And, he said something, Kristen, I thought was very interesting. The videos didn't start until he was on top of Dunn. And he said the reason was everyone was afraid to move. Like no one was going to make a move and get a camera out because of his threatening behavior. So, when Perry tackled him, that's when they started videoing after they felt comfortable when he had him secured. So
that says a lot, actually.
Yeah. And something that I admired, he'd been in the Marine Corps, but he was not a cop. He was just a passenger like everyone else. And I'm sure other people might have wanted to intervene, but they didn't do it. But he felt a responsibility to protect those around him. And that's what, I have so much respect. Now, I did serve in law enforcement, but even as a kid, I had respect for law enforcement. I shouldn't have to say it.
Same.
Yes, there's always a bad egg, of course, in any.
Yeah.
But people have no idea. I can remember pulling cars over at night, and you have no idea what's waiting on you behind that window. And the fact that he stepped forward and took action, the guy, he needs a key to the city, in my opinion. I don't know that you'll see anything like that happen, but he deserves a hero's reward.
It's really interesting. Like 20 years ago, the NYPD rides free on the Long Island Railroad, the LIRR. They ride free because 20 plus years ago, a NYPD officer who was going home to Long Island intervened during a shooting and was able to save many lives. And so back then they saw that as, something where he was rewarded, and going forward, all NYPD rode free back home because he saved lives and they knew it was a good thing. And so we see the complete opposite here in 2024. Actually, was that in 2023 when the incident took place?
I'm not sure, Kristen. I didn't look today.
I think it wasn't this year, but or it might have been. But so here we are, present time, and we're seeing a completely different response. Just imagine the courage it takes to act in a situation where you could easily freeze or do nothing out of fear. A lot of people respond that way. But he assessed the risk using his training, I'm sure, made a quick decision and moved to subdue Dunn. And he used a technique that he had learned as a Marine. It wasn't a perfect decision. No decision in a moment like that is ever going to be perfect, but it was decisive nonetheless.
And Perry's 6'2", Dunn was bigger than him.
Oh, yeah.
So that would have to run through your mind. I'm about to tackle someone who's even bigger than I am.
Right. Absolutely.
So, let's talk about risk.
Tackling a dude who's 6'6"?
Well, that is a risk.
I don't know. He looked huge. Yeah.
Kristen, I'm going to make a post. Spoiler. I'm literally going to make a post, and it's going to say I'm sick of empathy. It's going to be a little attention getter, but I kid you not. I was pretty fired up to take this training course. And it seems that that's all leaders train on is empathy. Right. Do we need empathy? Yes, but we get it. We got it. Right. There's, since Brene Brown did the greatest, the most watched TED Talk on empathy, and it was needed,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like it's overkill now. Now we're needing some
Yeah.
accountability. And I think,
Right.
I want to believe that's why my trainings are starting to really be a hit, because true
Yeah.
managers know the conflict, and they
Right.
need somebody to say it's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to hold people accountable.
Exactly.
And anyway, yeah, I'm going to fire off that post to see if I can get a little response on that.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
So leadership is easy when things are going well, but when you have to stand up to bullies, or you
Mm-hmm.
have to terminate or suspend or provide corrective feedback, that's the challenge of leadership. And
Right.
you have to wear many hats, and you have to be what is needed in that moment. And I think a lot of people have trouble operating in that space of holding people accountable. Now, I get it on empathy. There are always a few rude and crude managers that need empathy. And even in my scenario-based training, we have one where you need to be empathetic instead of, the opposite. So I certainly believe in it. I just think it's been overdone to the point everyone feels guilty or
Right.
insecure
Right.
about providing corrective feedback. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the risk. It's not, it goes beyond physical risk, I guess is what I'm wanting to say here. There's that societal risk, right? So in today's world, every action can be captured on a cell phone and judged on social media. And Penny knew his actions would be scrutinized. And that's, unfortunately, it's the same thing for law enforcement officers, right? So he was walking a tightrope between saving lives and potentially being accused of overstepping. Of course, no one could really see, what level that was going to go to. But that's something to think about. What was going through his mind at that
boy,
time?
was that a self-fulfilling prophecy. Look what the guy's
Right,
been through.
right, right. Absolutely.
So let's look at what should be at the focal point of any leader, and that is caring for others above yourself. It's the golden rule,
Mm-hmm.
as it says in the Bible. And again, I got to hear um, Daniel's point of view on this, and he was very concerned that Dunn was going to follow through with his threats. And he
Yeah.
saw people just frozen. There were women. I think there were a couple kids, maybe not real close, but everyone was just frozen. And then the guy is yelling and threatening, and it's escalating.
What
And
was he threatening exactly? Because I
well,
haven't watched the videos.
I can't give you exact quotes, but there were statements like, in some way he was going to do people harm. And he
Okay.
was just running and leaning into people. And
Yeah.
it was a very tense situation, as
I
you can
thought it
imagine.
was, yeah,
And
physical, like threats of violence, basically.
in use of force, Kristen, you have to
Mm-hmm.
believe there's an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury.
Yeah.
And in his mind, the threat became imminent. Now, there's a difference in immediate and imminent. Immediate is now, but imminent means it's going to happen, and it's going to happen. And that's all you have to
Right.
articulate. You got to
Right.
have ability, opportunity, and intent. And Dunn had the ability. He's 6'4", probably, muscular,
Mm-hmm.
waving his arms. He had the
Yeah.
opportunity because he had people locked in a capsule, like you said, on a
Mm-hmm.
train. And then he expressed his intent. So all the elements were there. I was
Yeah.
very confident that Penny would not get convicted. But you just never know in today's world.
Oh, you don't. Absolutely. Especially with the news, the way they frame it. Yeah. So while he's ensuring that no one else would get hurt, that was his objective there. And you really are in a capsule. It's not like on the movies or even the Long Island Railroad where you can move from car to car. The subway is not like that.
Mm-mm.
So there's no escaping. You're stuck in there with those people, which is actually terrifying if you think about it. But it's a critical aspect of leadership, putting others before yourself. And Penny didn't know the passengers personally, but he felt this sense of responsibility for their well-being. And that could be how he's wired. That could be his military training, could be a combination of both. But that's what leaders do. They care even when it's inconvenient and, in this case, dangerous.
Kristen, the stakes were very high because,
Mm-hmm.
there's the threat of lawsuits, other people getting harmed, all of these things. He could have a weapon,
Right.
but when you are intervening in a physical way, that's a whole different element. that he took that on. And Kristin, I thought back in the preface of my book, it's the night before I terminated a federal agent, and it was a nightmare. But also in my office, I had firearms instructors, defensive tactics instructors. So at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, you can bring a weapon on. You're not supposed to bring a weapon on campus. You're supposed to lock it up, but it's not like there's a magnetometer. So believe it or not, I had security in the office next door. He didn't know this. I had one of my best defensive tactics instructors across the hall. I arranged the seats at my conference table so that I could reach him. And I know he didn't realize that either. I didn't sit across from him. I had another branch chief across from him. I sat at the head of the table, but I could reach over and touch him because I thought if he goes for a gun, I'm gonna go for it. So, but I had all that running through my mind. Think about that, and then you got to deliver the termination speech with all of that in your mind. It was a very challenging situation. So, not on this level, but I do empathize with Daniel in this scenario.
Right. I do too. And this is obviously this doesn't have the threat level that yours did, but I had an employee who my area manager happened to be at my branch. This is many moons ago, but he observed my employee giving very poor customer service. So he's like, let's pull him back and we'll talk to him. Okay. So we're doing that. And the way my area manager approached it versus the way I would approach it was vastly different. And it didn't go over well with this employee. And the employee reared his arm back like he was going to punch him. And at that point, you would think if you do that, if you're in somebody's face, if you're in your boss's face and you're acting like you're going to physically, putting out the, what would you say that this is rearing back, right? I don't know exactly what to say, but as if for those that aren't watching us, act like you're going to punch somebody, have your fist back by your head, right?
Hey, I teach body language. That's pretty universal.
That's pretty universal. That's a threat right there. And so he did that to my boss and he didn't get fired for that. I called HR and they were like, well, we're just going to do a final warning on this, right? So I have somebody continuing to work for me who threatened to punch my boss. And so his behaviors continued. So I had to go to the next, which was term. When I did that, I, of course, had security there. Get this, my area manager, he didn't want to be there for the termination. Imagine that. And so he had me and I had my assistant come in with me, but we did have security outside the door. And it's funny because the person I let go, he did not try to, hit me or anything like that, but you just don't know. I was very close. It was definitely running through my mind, like, he has no reason not to, right? He just did that to my assistant or to my area manager. But you have to think about what can possibly happen. And you just never know.
Everyone's doing the Village People, the YMCA, the Trump dance. We need to bring back Macho Man by the... Macho Man.
Yeah. That would be a good one, right?
All their songs are basically the same. But
oh, my goodness.
But yeah, we need some Macho Men.
Yeah, we need to have people willing to stand up to the backlash.
So I don't know if you can have more than one elephant in the room, but another elephant in the room is the backlash.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
After the incident, penny-faced, you heard it, folks, accusations of racism and vigilante.
No.
I know you're shocked.
You're serious? Racism?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Wow,
Vigilantism. And critics claim that his actions were excessive and rooted in bias, turning him into a polarizing figure almost overnight. As a matter of fact,
I remember that.
I listened to speeches from this week after the verdict, and there were people of color saying, if it hadn't been a white jury, all this other stuff, and it turns out it wasn't a white jury. So I'm okay with people. Listen, that's the First Amendment. Say whatever, but it would really be nice if someone would read and get some facts. And then when Daniel addressed that, he said literally that there were people of different ethnicities sitting there and he was trying to protect everyone. And he said he didn't attack an African-American person. He attacked a violent person. And that's the only thing that was on his mind. So
They should have had the people from that subway car be the jury. I think you would have had.
Well,
right?
I do think there was some testimony in that
good.
regard, but we've got to get to the point of people who are reasonable of all backgrounds and cultures need to stop giving these people audience and allowing them to spew this type. Again, it's First Amendment, but that doesn't mean I have a First Amendment right not to listen or scroll through or whatever.
Right.
So, but you know that's coming when it happens. But we've got to get to the point that we move beyond race being a factor in everything.
Yeah, it gets old. And this is really where leadership meets resilience. And it's easy to stand tall when people agree with you. And he sure did, but people didn't agree with him. But real leaders show their strength when they face opposition. And that's what we saw there. And he could have backed down, apologized for his actions, tried to shift blame, but instead he stood firm. He maintained that his intentions were to protect others and not harm anyone out of malice.
Yeah, I was, you mentioned the impact on him. I watched his interview and I kind of looked around his eyes and to just see, I thought he would be really haggard, but he looked pretty strong. I think he somehow managed to function well during this time, but he was looking at serious prison times. We haven't said it yet, but Dunn did pass away, and but even as Daniel said, his chest was going up and down on the video. He was not out to kill anyone. That was never his desire.
Right.
But that is a factor we hadn't brought in yet. And of course, that certainly, anytime someone dies, you need to investigate anything. It's just,
absolutely.
if you already have a preconceived conclusion before you start to investigate, then the investigation is null and void. And that's basically what happens, especially when you say it's racially motivated. It's getting old. Really old.
Exactly. My sentiment, exactly. Yeah, he was labeled a murderer, a racist. His life was turned upside down. Yet he kept his focus on the truth and that his actions were about saving lives, not taking them. And that's a lesson for all of us. Leadership regularly, often it comes with criticism. I can't imagine leadership not having at least an element of criticism, especially in today's hyper polarized world. But standing by your values and decisions, even when it's uncomfortable, that is what defines true leadership.
Yeah. And people know that, I'm considered a leadership guru, and I do think about leadership in most contexts. And as soon as I saw this playing out, I started breaking down leadership principles that you could take away from this. I'm leaving for Texas in the morning. And Kristin, I've got one segment called a well-oiled machine. It's about teamwork. And I'm going to be playing where a running back catches the ball, drops it in the end zone, and ends up running for a touchdown. And the way his team protected him. And the way he had to...
Pun intended, oil, Texas.
Yeah.
I like it.
The way he maneuvered and everything is pretty interesting. And basically my point is, imagine if we operated that way, that we're protecting our fellow people. So anyway, in conclusion, Kristin, let's break down some leadership lessons that we've touched on a few, but let's drive some points home. Why don't you take those?
Yeah, happy to. So key takeaways, I would say, 1, taking initiative. Leadership starts with action. He didn't wait for someone else on the train to step up. He took the lead. He had the training, right? So that makes sense. But he took the lead in that. Another one, navigating risks. Every leadership decision involves risk. Penny weighed the potential consequences and he acted in the best interest of the group. And we talked a lot about caring for others. True leadership will prioritize the safety and well-being of others, even when it comes at a personal cost. We've both experienced that. And then I would say, lastly, standing up to backlash. Leadership requires resilience. And Penny stood by his actions despite this intense criticism he faced. And that showed integrity and conviction.
Yeah, it does. And this story, of course, we're relieved the jury found him not guilty, but, the public discourse will continue. There will continue to be slanderous talks against him. But I would encourage anyone, watch the interviews on this. Do a little bit of research before you post. do some research before you respond. And Kristin knows this. We were actually going to do another story, and we both decided that events were just breaking every minute.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't want to jump on here and do a different podcast. We wanted to make sure that we had some details. And
Right.
I do wish, I'm not building us up, but I do wish people would do that. Do some research and look at the fact of the lives that he saved on that train.
Right.
He potentially saved, and obviously, and the jury thought that this person was going to deliver on his threats. So this guy's a hero. I hope they did a GoFundMe. I hope he didn't have legal bills, and hope he can walk away with this with, able to have a great standard of living and go on with his life. But he might be a potential speaker in a conference sometime, Kristin.
Oh my goodness. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, we may get him
That
next
would be
year.
wild. I mean, it really, something like this challenges us to think about how we view leaders in moments of crisis. And are we willing to support those who step up, even when their actions don't fit neatly into expectations? I mean, it's a tough question, but one worth asking.
No, it really is. By the way, in the conference, I left my neon sign cord, so Kristin's outshining me as usual.
Unhappy about that.
I was very unhappy. It's only because the sound guy, I kept saying, no, we're going to have to risk it. I'm not taking my neon sign. This is the Holy Grail back here. And he was like, no, I'll lay it out. We'll get it. And sure enough, we're about to record, and I'm all over the house. I had Jansen, my daughter, helping me, but no cord. I did put a spotlight on it, Kristin.
It looks good. Yeah. Hey, it's not that noticeable.
I did what I could do.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone.
The show must go on.
Yeah. We haven't said this in a long time, but we got a lot of traction on the podcast the other day. We had some heavy hitters. The Dirty Side of Leadership t-shirts, the podcast t-shirts are such a hit. I don't know how many Kristin has made and given away, but they're really sharp. But we had some movers and shakers took it upon themselves to put those t-shirts on, Kristin, and take that picture.
Yeah, I love it.
I put it on our Instagram, but we need to put that out more. I wanted to talk with you first, but that was really cool. And folks, it means the world to us if you download, if you rate the podcast. Of course, that's how you get a t-shirt. You rate it and DM Kristin and I with your size.
Yeah,
color,
I have a bunch left,
and
so I'll do them until I run out.
She's got them left. So yeah, we would love to send you a free t-shirt. You don't get that every day.
No, you don't.
But also,
and I'm shipping them from my humble abode.
Yeah.
So, and I'm writing on them like it's from me, not an outfit that I've paid to do it.
No, it's really great. I really appreciate you doing that. And also, if you do love YouTube, we are looking at putting more emphasis on YouTube. We're not sure how it's going to look, but go ahead and click that like and subscribe button since you're right there watching. That helps us out.
Exactly. Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think we just hope this episode resonated with you. And it's important that we really have enjoyed, and we've heard back from listeners that they've enjoyed this as well, finding these headline stories, right? And breaking down leadership failures. And actually, in this case, really where we see exemplary leadership. So it's been really fun to be able to do that. And because I don't think everyone reads news articles and immediately is looking for where leadership is weaved within. So we're here to do that for you.
Very true. Hey, everybody, we appreciate you. Be the leader you're meant to be.
We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.